please hit that subscribe button. Hey everybody, better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live. Hey everybody, so it's time once again for another lineup projection video, and today, moving back over to the Western Conference, we're going to be talking about the Nashville Predators. So basically what I do here is try to piece together what I think the Nashville Predators lineup could look like when hockey does return, when they play against the Arizona Coyotes in their play-in round series. I'll talk about where I would put guys, where I think that, the coaching staff will actually put guys, and just overall try to work those two things together to piece together some sort of lineup projection for Nashville heading into this play-in round. Before we begin, I just ask that you subscribe to the channel if you are new and hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. Those likes really go a long way in helping the channel. But thank you all for watching, and let's get into it. So I'm going to switch over to the cap-friendly screen here, looking at Nashville. Nashville's an interesting team, to say the least. They're a team that overall has a pretty good roster, but was fairly disappointing this year, and was not one of those top teams in the West that I think a lot of people thought they would be. The addition of Matt Duchene did not go as well, I think, as certainly the Predators would have hoped, giving him $8 million a year. And they're just overall a team that underperformed for the most part this year. But here we go. We've got the roster up here, and we've got some pieces that we can play with. So to start, I've said this in past lineup projections as well. This is not a marathon. This is not about being good for the long haul. This is not something where this is a sprint. This is an absolute sprint. It's the first team to win 3 games. I am stacking the lines, and I've been doing that throughout. I am stacking your top lines with your best players. I know some people like balance, some coaches like balance, and they want to have 3 scoring lines. Listen, you're just trying to win 3 games as quickly as you can before the other team wins 3 games. I am stacking my top lines with the best players, and that means Philip Forsberg, Matt Duchene, and Victor Arvidsson is my first line. Those are your 2 best goal scorers on the roster, and Matt Duchene is your number 1 center. He did not play great this year. He's still your number 1 center because Johansson was even worse. Arvidsson did not have a good year, but when it comes down to it, especially playoff-style hockey, Arvidsson is one of your best players, and Philip Forsberg, your clear-cut number 1 goal scorer. I'm stacking all of those guys on that first line and trying to be dominant with that line as far as offense goes. Second line, Ryan Johansson, terrible year this year, about half the number of points that he usually gets, but he's still your second line center, and he's definitely playing in that second line spot. Now, this is where things start to get interesting, is who is going to play with Ryan Johansson. Now, I definitely think Mikael Granlund was starting to play a lot better as the season went along. He didn't have a great offensive year production-wise, but I really think he really started to get better. So put him there on the second line with Johansson. And then on the other side, Calle Jarnkrok actually had a very good year this year. Now, you don't have to put him there. You could potentially move him down to the third line, put Grimaldi up there, or if you want to make big changes, and this would involve moving Kyle Turris, you could move Kyle Turris to the second line right wing. You can move Arvidsson over to the left side because he can play both sides, and that would really shake this lineup up. And that's something that is kind of a whole... I'll do that after, because that's kind of like a whole lineup switch based on Kyle Turris, whether he plays center or wing. So for right now, this is if Kyle Turris is playing center. He's your third line center at this point. I would put Jarnkrok up there, put Grimaldi on the third line. Grimaldi can play either side. He's listed as a right wing. He's a right shot, but he can play either side. Craig Smith actually had a decent year this year. He's your third line right wing. And that leaves Nick Bonino as your fourth line center. And then Colton Sissons, when healthy, definitely going to be in the lineup. I think Austin Watson deserves to be in the lineup. He brings that grit, that physicality that you need, especially in come playoff time. And then they've got a whole bunch of other guys. You could slot different guys in. Tolvanen could play. Blackwell could certainly play. He played a lot this year. Trennan could play. There are guys you could slot in there, but I'm putting Watson in there for now as your physical, tough, gritty guy on that fourth line. So that's your top 4 lines, I think, if Turris plays center. Now and then you have all these depth guys. Daniel Carr will probably get a call up. Freddie Gaudreau has some experience. Matthew Olivier, Michael McCarron. These were all guys down in the AHL who, with the expanded rosters up to 28 players, you're going to see them get called up as extra guys. Some of them, especially Blackwell, Trennan, Tolvanen, those are guys that could potentially slot into the starting lineup if you wanted to take any of these guys out. But I think to start, you're going to go with this group, in my opinion. Now we have what could possibly happen if Kyle Turris plays wing. So if Kyle Turris plays wing, he is going to be your second line right wing with Johansson most likely. Arvidsson is probably then going to move to the left side. And Granlund would go to the top line with Duchesne and Forsberg. Turris would play with Johansson and Arvidsson on the left side, which would then knock Calle Jarnkrok down to the third line with Nick Bonino would now be your third line center. I think Colton Sissons would then move to the middle to be your fourth line center. And Austin Watson probably moves back to the right side. So your third line would be Jarnkrok, Bonino, and Smith. And then Watson, Sissons, and Grimaldi would be your fourth line. I personally almost, I don't want to say I like this lineup better. I like this top 6 better. I think for the top, no, I like this bottom. Man, this is tough. I don't know. Do you want Turris in the middle, or do you? This really comes down to the coaching staff, and do they want Turris in the middle, or do they want Turris on a wing? I like this bottom 6 better, actually. I really like this bottom 6. With Jarnkrok, Bonino, and Smith as your third line. That's actually a very good third line. And then Watson, Sissons, and Grimaldi. That's a solid fourth line right there too. I mean, that is an incredibly good deep bottom 6. Both those lines can score. Both those lines can bring some physicality if they need to, particularly that fourth line with Sissons and Watson. I really like that bottom 6. I don't as much like I don't know. I mean, I almost want Arvidsson with Duchesne and Forsberg, like, no matter what, which would then maybe Granlund plays the left side. He's listed as a center and a right wing, but maybe Granlund plays the left side. That wouldn't be too bad. With this right here, with the exception of Granlund playing the offside, which maybe he can, I like that top 6 too. I really like this bottom 6 with Bonino as your third line center, Smith and Jarnkrok. That is a hell of a third line. I really, really do like that bottom. And then the top 6 isn't bad. I mean, as long as you got Forsberg and Duchesne together, I think that works out really well. And I like Craig Smith being a third line guy because that gives you good scoring on your third line. This team has options. They've got guys that they can move throughout this lineup. Arvidsson, I mean, he wouldn't be bad. I like stacking that top line, but he would not be bad as on the left side. And then that gives, Arvidsson, Johansson, and Turris a second line a good second line, and then Granlund plays the right side of the top line with Duchesne and Forsberg. That actually might work out. There's a lot of options here. I almost like this lineup the best, I think. Now thinking about it and going through all this, I really think I like this lineup the best. That gets gets Bonino into a third line spot, which I think he's a third line center more than a fourth line center. He had a really, really good year this year. So it doesn't bury Bonino. It gives you, this team doesn't have a lot as far as left wings go. It gives you Victor Arvidsson on the left side, but a better, gets you a better second line left winger with Arvidsson there. Granlund more than capable of playing top line. Although he didn't have a great year this year, he's certainly a talented player, and that puts Turris on the wing. I think takes some of the pressure off of Kyle Turris. I at this point, with the way Turris has played the last couple of years, I like Turris on the wing better than in the middle. I This is my favorite of the possible Nashville lineups right here. Obviously, they've got a lot of pieces that they can move around, but I'm going to stick with this for the forward group, but there's a lot of moving parts here. Defensively, not so much. Ryan Ellis and Roman Josi is your top pair. That is an absolute given. There's nothing to even think about there. Matthias Ekholm and Dante Fabro, definitely your second pair. Neither of those guys had great seasons this year. Fabro in his rookie year certainly looked like a rookie at times, and Ekholm had a down year. The stats don't necessarily show it, but Ekholm this year just did not look like himself, particularly defensively. He still had like 35 points or something like that, somewhere around there, which is a solid year. But defensively, something just looked off with Matthias Ekholm. So hopefully he gets back to being, the Ekholm that we're used to. And this long break will be good for him to get him back in the right frame of mind. But he's certainly your number 3 D-man with Fabro on the right side. And then Corbinian Holzer, who they picked up at the trade deadline, I think plays on the right side of your bottom pair. And it's really, this spot comes down to Jared Tenorti or Dan Hamhuis. Jared Tenorti played very well in the games that he played for Nashville this year. So I'm going to give that spot to Tenorti and make Hamhuis the 7th defenseman right now. Again, if you want to go with a veteran and go with more experience, then Hamhuis slots in on that bottom pair left side. But given the way that they played this year, Hamhuis really struggled. Tenorti actually played well. I'm going to give Tenorti that spot. Hamhuis is your 7th defenseman. Yannick Weber is kind of your 8th D-man depth guy. And then a couple of guys that I think will certainly get called up from the AHL. Steven Santini is a guy that probably gets the call up. And then Jeremy Davies, really good college player. I think as a young guy, he might get a look as kind of an extra depth guy. And they've got a couple other defensemen who you could possibly call up. Brandon Fortunato is another one like Jeremy Davies. Good college player. If you want to go younger, you could go there. Or Ben Harper. He's had some NHL experience with Ottawa. He's a guy that you could call up possibly as a depth D-man. And then in goal, Connor Ingram, certainly your number 3. Rene and Saros are the top pair, the top 2, 1A, 1B as they've been all year. Who starts? That's up for grabs. UC Saros had taken over the starting job by the time that the season was ending. And Rene really, really had a bad year this year. But with all this time off, I think there's a good chance they go back to Pekka Rene. He is the franchise goalie and has been for over a decade now. So with so much time in between, I don't think, Rene at least I think is going to get a chance to get that starting job, and then Saros would be the backup. But if they do base it on the way guys were playing this year, Saros could actually start and Rene would be the backup, because Saros was fantastic from really January on. He played very, very well, and Rene really struggled. So, the who starts and who backs up is a little bit of a question mark right now. But those are certainly your top 2, and then Connor Ingram I would think would be the 3. So at the end of the day, there's definitely options here with Nashville. They're a team that really kind of disappointed this year, did not play all that well compared to what they were expected to be. So it's going to be interesting to see what the coaching staff, John Hines, decides to do. Obviously, you've got a big question as to who's the starter and who's the backup. You've got, defensively, it's pretty well set, except for maybe do you play Hamhuis or do you play Tenorti? Tenorti played better than Hamhuis this year. So, that's kind of a question. And then those forward lines, you could mix those forward lines up all different ways, and they have been mixed up all different ways this season. That was something that all year long we saw Nashville's lines getting shuffled and moved around because they weren't performing well. So, they've definitely got options there. They could, the big question, does Turris play center? Does Turris play the wing? Forsberg and Duchesne, I think you keep them together, but who plays on the right side? Does Arvidsson, do you want him at right wing, or do you need him to play left wing behind Forsberg to give you a little more depth scoring wise? I mean, there's definite questions there as well. But that's what I've got for a lineup projection. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts with Nashville and a lot of decisions to be made. But with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.